That's just one aspect. And I talked about the fact that modernization and the user experience is so much more. So what I'd like to do actually is call a couple of people up on stage, because I'm going to do my let's talk section here now. So you can listen to me, but what I thought I'd do is interview a couple of folks that spend a lot of time, pretty much all their time, looking at application modernization. So if I could call up to the stage my two guest panelists. First of all, Servoy, Jan Aleman, and John Harlow from Progress Professional Services. John? Have a seat.
Hi.
Thank you. I didn't realize until now it was Jan and John. I didn't even realize that. So what I'd like to do is just, obviously both of these guys spend a lot of time. Servoy's a service delivery partner, and they've done a lot of different modernizations. And John, obviously driving the Progress Professional Services, has spent a lot of time with a lot of customers. And so what I thought I'd do is just let each one of them, just tell a little bit about what they've been doing. So let's start, John, first with you. In terms of modernization efforts, if you could just share with the crowd, what are some of the key trends you're seeing? What are the things that people are focused on, or right now what you're kind of seeing from a trend perspective?
Well, I think modernization's kind of a catch-all term right now a little bit. I mean, for some of our customers, modernization is adding analytics to their application. For some, it's incorporating our rules engines and things like that. I think most of us tend to think, and I do, when you talk to me about modernization, it's separating the business logic out, exposing it through an application interface, and then typically building a new web or mobile UI over it. And that's honestly what most of our modernization efforts are around right now. Customers are taking, typically not the entire app, but a bit of it, and either deciding this piece needs to be mobile or this piece needs to be updated, or maybe it's a new piece of functionality that they want to add onto the application and build with a newer architecture. But in general, when I think of modernization, it's our customers getting that business logic in a position where it can be exposed as a microservice, as a REST API call to a user interface, or something like that.
Great, thanks. Jan, some of the key trends you guys are seeing, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we're seeing is the sense of urgency. It's really becoming important now to modernize applications. And it's really hard. It's really very difficult if you have a complex, who has a complex application here?
Yeah.
Just two people? That's it? Modernizing a complex application is extremely difficult. A lot of people have tried it for a long time, and it's difficult to get all the right pieces together. It's like, who solved this, by the way? If you haven't, then you have to come to my booth. I have cognitive intelligence at my booth that will help you solve this cube. And it's like this cube. If you know how to solve this, there are people that can solve this in 4.7 seconds. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's like modernizing applications. It's very difficult to do.
Yeah. So I've been talking about the user experience. And John, I know you've had a lot of the specific modernization projects that you've been working on have been around that user experience. Want to share some of the things that you think people have done really well, maybe?
Yeah, I think our customers who've embraced user experience have actually taken a little bit of the pain of the modernization process out. We've still got to deal with all the issues of separating their code, but they're able, through good UX process and design, to have a really good vision of what it is they're going to build and why they're going to build those things, and have a vision of it before they actually start doing a lot of coding. So we have one customer here in the States, Upper Lake Foods, who needed to modernize their overall application, but they knew they needed specific pieces of it to be responsive and web-driven for their customers, but they also knew they needed other pieces that would need to function as mobile and potentially standalone. And they went through a pretty comprehensive user experience process with us and really nailed what we were trying to accomplish with these projects, what it was going to look like. And it turned out to be a lot cheaper to iterate with the user experience people till they were happy with what they were going to get before we ever started putting finger to keyboard to write code. So we see in general that customers who go through a pretty strong user experience, user interface planning session before they actually start the process of re-architecting and redesigning their apps tend to get there a lot faster. Like I say, it's still a heavy lift to separate your business logic from your user experience, from your UI, but knowing how you're going to access the code, the kind of calls you're going to make into it. I mean, we've done projects where 160 character screens might become 38 web screens as you migrate the app. And if you know that ahead of time, it changes how you break the code apart as well.
Yeah. Great. Jan, any thoughts about the user experience specifically?
Yeah, I'm a developer myself. I started developing software about 30 years ago. And I think that if you want to do proper UX, you have to turn your development paradigm upside down. And what I mean with that is we used to start as developers by thinking about architecture, then thinking about a database model, then writing some business logic, and the UI was often the afterthought. And if you want to do UX properly, you have to completely do that the other way around. You have to begin with the user experience. That means really talking to your customer. We all hate that. I do as well. We like to stay behind our desk, maybe pick up the phone, but email is better for support, isn't it? But with proper UX, you have to go out and really talk to your customers, interview them, see how they're using your application. And you're going to find out some very, very interesting things. And we're seeing that while helping Progress partners to modernize, when they truly engage with their customers, their application is going to be completely different, the interaction with the user versus what they used to have.
Yeah. So obviously these guys out in the audience are application partners, they're ISVs, they have to watch their budget, right? But if there's an opportunity to make money, I think they probably are interested in it. Can you, John, share some of the things you see in terms of the opportunities when you take the time to think about the user experience or to do some of that modernization?
Well, I think the most common thing we run into is partners, they want to dip their toe in the water, and there are a lot of choices and a lot of different paths they could go. And the ones who seem to be the most successful are the ones who will take one aspect of the application or one new aspect of the application and take that and go out and build something successful around, for instance, Upper Lake Foods. We suddenly now need a mobile inventory control system that stands alone. But that is what broke the ice for them and got them. And then they said, oh, yeah, now we understand how this works, and we can see a path to modernizing a lot more of our applications. So I think there's a lot of kind of analysis paralysis when you're trying to figure out what to modernize, how to modernize. And I'm in favor of a lot of small successes in that process rather than trying to go out and jump in and do the whole thing. I think, and I'm in favor of earning revenue along the way as you do it, increasing revenue.
Yeah. Jan, some opportunities you see from the partner perspective?
Yeah, what we see with partners of Progress doing modernization is they see new opportunities. So very often with a cloud-based, this is typically what they do with our technologies, they go to a cloud-based product. They can enter into new markets, sometimes from vertical into horizontal, but very often also into lower end markets where they used to say we can only sell our product, our ERP, if it's a $100,000 project or bigger. But with a cloud offering, and if you develop with UX first, you don't need 10 days of training. So you can sell it at a lower price point. You can have customers on board by themselves if you use the frameworks to get there. So that's a tremendous revenue growth opportunity for partners. Just moving into markets on the side where you already are, or down into smaller markets.
Yeah. So with opportunities, usually there come issues or obstacles or, issues with trying to make it happen. And I know a lot of times it comes down to, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough resource, we really can't stop doing what we're doing right now. John, just commenting on some of those obstacles, any ways in which you've seen people be able to overcome some of those obstacles or what some of the gotchas are?
Yeah, well, to some extent also, we're here to help with that, from our services point of view. But I think that customers have found when they take a very prescriptive approach to the process, so a lot of our customers out there, and I was an AP at one time as well, we all kind of rolled it our own way. We all discovered fire. We all invented the wheel. We did all those things. And the day for doing that is past. So I think now embracing a very prescriptive process and knowing what pieces of the work you possibly can contract out versus doing yourself. I mean, if you look at the typical open-edge shop, they may not be rife with detailed UX skills maybe, or serious Ajax, JavaScript skills. But those are things that pieces that you have a good, clear delineation between the API to your application and the user interface. Those are things that you can leverage outside resources economically to help you get there, and focus your team on the biggest single value they bring to the table, which is their knowledge of your business domain and what your application needs to do. So I think there are a lot of ways partners, the open edge world, we were always one guy does everything. It's we're all Renaissance people. We did everything from the UI all the way down to the lowest bits and tune the database. But the reality is, I think as a partner now, you need to step back and say, let me leverage my people for their domain knowledge and their knowledge of the business logic. And we can find a lot of other resources on a more transient basis to build our user interface. We can use user experience to make that a very clear process for the people doing it. So I think there are a lot of ways a partner can leverage outside resources.
Mm-hmm. Great. Jan, some obstacles you've seen, some ways to overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, and I fully agree with you. I think the do-it-yourself approach is the biggest obstacle. And obviously, most of the Progress partners are very technical companies. We like to invent everything by ourselves. We like to research new technologies. We like to try out new things. But trying to do that with modernization is, with the sense of urgency that I mentioned before, can be a very big risk. You can easily spend, I was talking to a partner we recently signed up, they spent 3 years trying to modernize their application with .NET, and they hadn't achieved anything. And that's because, maybe it was the wrong choice, maybe it was the wrong people involved. It is a very complex technology. Microsoft keeps changing the front-end technologies from WinForms to Silverlight to now HTML5. So there are a lot of choices that have to be made. So find partners that have experience, and I think your team is doing a very good job at that know all the steps that you have to go through to be successful. And we actually created a program for that. We call it the Assurance Program. And no, it's not an insurance, it's an assurance. And we can guarantee you that if you follow those steps, and there are about 20 steps that companies go through, that you can modernize a complex application. And I know most of you have very complex applications, and yes, it is very hard to modernize a complex application. We know that from experience.
Yeah. So what advice, obviously, modernization and keeping up and making sure that your application is always addressing the latest things, and we just heard this morning about the next generation of applications and applications of the future. John, what advice do you give partners? And you have to give it for free today, but what advice do you give the partners in terms of modernizing their application, or what are some best practices, some things they should absolutely not do, or things they need to do?
Well, the first thing I would say is I go back to something Jan said earlier, which is figure out first what you want to accomplish. Are you going to move to the cloud? Are you going to downscale? Are you going to offer a new feature that makes you more competitive? Or are you going to answer a feature a competitor's got out there? So understand why you're doing it first. And then set the scope as tightly as you can, and bring in and do the full user experience, and try and embrace an existing framework. There are plenty of third-party framework products out there. We offer one as well, but try and not have to reinvent everything. Try and fit your application architecture into the type of stack that we as a company have committed to support ourselves going forward, so that as we make changes, as Kendo UI Builder becomes more and more powerful, it just lays down naturally over the business objects you've created, for example. And try and go that direction, but try and set the scope properly so that you can find the pitfalls and find the patterns and identify the processes pretty quickly and know what is successful for you and your team so that you've got a path to go forward with.
Great. Jan, thoughts, final advice? Again, it has to be for free.
Okay.
So, yeah, so...
Yeah, my advice is do it right or don't do it at all. And let me give you an example. I had a customer, an ERP vendor in Canada, and they said, okay, we like your UX first talk. We're going to do that. And I said, so how are you going to do that? And he said, yeah, we'll interview our users. And I said, so are you going to actually really listen to them? And they went back and they started thinking. And what they have in place now is quite impressive. The story's too long to tell all the details, but in short, they deliver builds in sprints. So every 2 weeks they have a build, and they've added to the definition of done. An existing customer who has never used our new system has to be able to put in an order without any training. And if that doesn't work, the build goes back to the team, and they have to start their sprint again. Now that is really involving your user in your process of building and delivering a new application. And yes, that's hard. And yes, the developers are going to hate you if you start doing this. But once you have it in place, they will love you because they will really feel that they're building what your customers really want, and your customers will really like that as well. They're very successful with that.